All right. Well, hello everyone and happy 2026. I know January has already felt like a year, at least for me so far. So it feels weird saying like Happy New Year, but I know that's kind of our theme for today's session. So we are still in January and it is our new year. And we have some exciting topics for today. Just a couple of housekeeping slides to run through first. I did just start the recording as I started sharing. So you are on air, you're being recorded. And this gives us the opportunity to upload this to our YouTube channel after today's session. So you can go back and watch it, share it with any of your friends who weren't able to make it. But if you do prefer to not be on camera because this is live, feel free to stay off. But we do love to see your beautiful faces. And if there's anything for your company that you need to hop off because it's being recorded, you can do so now. And so just for those of you who might be new, I think this is our third session, Jen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, well, this is our third session. So some of you might be newcomers and some of you have been here since the start. But for those who are new, we are a WUG. So that's a Workfront User Group. This is the Philly one, but we are open to everyone. I know we have some people from across the country here. And for those on this call, you're also welcome to hop into some other people's WUGs from across the country if you see some cool topics. It really is just a place for us to come together and share ideas, learn from each other, and it's supported by Adobe. So it's a really great opportunity to learn and share with the community, because that's what makes Workfront so great, is the community that we've built around it. So just some house rules, again, for those who might have not been on these calls before. We don't have any self-promotion of any kind or pitching, so please don't throw anything in the chat about your company or anything you might be trying to offer or sell, and just be respectful of the members on here. Don't reach out to anybody on this chat or over LinkedIn unless you have received consent from them, and just respect the privacy on this call and on other topics. Some people do share certain instances of situations that have happened within their company that might be private. So just don't share details about your company if you don't feel comfortable on the call, and don't share that information with other people outside of this call. And with that, I will hand it off to Jen to kick off what today's topic's all about.
Awesome. Thank you, Kaylee. So guys, thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy that you are here. So today we're going to talk about Workfront resolutions and learning from last year's mistakes. The reason that we are having this discussion today is I made my first pretty large mistake in Workfront this past October. And let me tell you something, I did it in prod. And I learned so much from that mistake. And Kaylee and I want to humanize the fact that we are human. And we do make mistakes. But again, what's the takeaway and what did we learn? So I'm going to walk you through the mistake that I made in Workfront. Kaylee also has a story to share, and then we are going to open it up to the floor to see if anyone else has some nuggets that they can pass along. Okay, so what was I trying to do? I work at Aramark, and we have an internal agency that supports 10 lines of business. So we have an intake form that our lines of business use that's connected to Salesforce for projects, and we charge out. We have an hourly rate, and different types of projects cost different things. So I was trying to update our intake form because we had a whole new set of prices. We have a new hourly rate, and we had hours associated with different types of projects that the team was requesting. So that was what I was trying to do. What I did incorrectly was I took our intake form and I actually copied our intake form. And the reason I did this was I have a ton of display logic in our intake form. Depending on what folks select, then I have a pricing list with hours and a description that populates so that upon submission, they almost have a receipt as to what they signed up for. So in order to avoid updating all of my display logic, I copied the form, updated the prices, and then replaced the updated form in an active request queue. what happened was, and some of you may already know this, and maybe you've made this mistake as well, but the new fields that I created actually overrode historical records within the system. So I definitely had a moment of panic. Kayla, you can go to the next slide.
Yep. Sorry, I gotta make sure I mouse. There we go.
Definitely had a moment of panic. I figured out, in terms of how to fix this, that this actually only affected records from May until September, luckily. So I made a report to determine what projects were affected by my error. And then I went back into my request queue and I included some of like the historical information that was overrode. So that way I could go back into the report that I created and then do like a mass bulk update to rectify the records. Now, I was very fortunate in the sense that that corrected about 60% of the data that I overrode. Unfortunately, there was some things with my display logic that were not able to be rectified. So in order to make note of those projects that were affected, I did include a note section in the admin only section of my form. And then I went back and kind of made a note so that we just have it for governance that these were the projects that were affected. I learned so much though in that exercise, let me tell you. So what did I learn? Well, I need to create brand new custom fields for new prices. The reason for that is each new custom field will have a unique name and ID, and then I'll have to move the older pricing that no longer is needed to that admin only section on the form. Lessons learned. I also learned that the amount of display logic that I have in my intake form really is not best practice. I didn't realize that this was not best practice until I spoke to Adobe support. When you talk to Adobe support and they say to you, we've never seen anything quite like this before, you almost need to pause and then honestly reevaluate. So that is for future gen. In a couple months, I will reevaluate the intake form, but I did not know that the layers of display logic that I included was not the best path. Something else that I learned is, listen, if you're going to do anything big in your system, before you do it, refresh your sandbox. I also learned that I was not able to refresh my sandbox because I had a few other projects in there that were not 100% finished that I wanted to then move over to prod. So lesson learned there. Had I been able to refresh my sandbox, I could have easily created a fusion scenario to rectify the historical data that I lost. My last thing that I learned is that Adobe support is A+. I mapped out the issue that I was having, and the support person that I got was on top of it. I spent a lot of time with her, and she really kind of went above and beyond and helped me map out best practices moving forward. So that was my error. Kaylee, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Yes, and we all feel for Jen. I saw some people in the comments having PTSD. I think that's all happened to the best of us, and we always learn. So that's the goal.
Always learn.
If you haven't made the mistake yet from today, we're sharing so that hopefully none of you do make this mistake. But
Absolutely.
it is a lot. Yeah. So I have 3 main things I will touch on that I have learned. Unfortunately, I think all of these were kind of learned in the last year too. The first one being that group assignments on approvals matter. When my instance was set up, we only had marketing and everything was just shared with everything in the system because it was just us. And this year we had our IT team move in to Workfront with us, and they requested that we change the group assignment on our approvals so that the IT team doesn't see the system approvals that are just all of marketing's approvals. And we were like, sure, is that fine? And then they talked to their consultant. Their consultant's like, yeah, it shouldn't change anything besides the view. It does change more than that. So if you have any projects that are set up as a queue that have approvals on your queue topics, and that project is shared with a certain group, you need to make sure that your approvals are also aligned with that group. So we had a project queue, request queue that's shared with like our all others group, which is basically everyone in the system except for IT. So they were like, can you just share it with the marketing group? Like put your approvals to assign to marketing group. And we lost all of our approval queues. All our queue topics lost approval. So that was fun to figure out. And I solved it by, we actually had a really messy queue topic situation. And this was all like ancient stuff that was built a couple of years ago it's been working, so we left it. Well, now it's not working, so I was like, we're going to use the new and improved model. I actually have a fusion scenario that applies approval loops to requests based on what region they're in for our business. So I quickly just made new queue topics and ran them through that new fusion scenario. I still have a audit job on my hands to go back and audit, because deleting queue topics doesn't delete those requests that were submitted, but it does delete the path. So if you have any reports like I do that report on what type of request was this, it'll delete that information. So what I'm doing is I'm going back and I'm adding a field, kind of like Jen added in an admin only section that's like queue topic override. And I'm just putting what the request type was on all of these historical requests where they're going to lose their queue topic. I am trying to build something in Fusion. I haven't really gotten to it yet. So everything's just like sitting behind the scenes in the system. But that's something that I definitely learned this year. The other two are a little less of a big problem I ran into, but something I'd also learned from support that's not best practice is using the same calculated field on multiple custom forms. We have a calculated field. We have drop downs. So I work at Toll Brothers. We have communities across the country and we have regions across the country. We have drop downs for those. And it's multi-select fields. So we also have a calculated field that just pulls what was selected. It's really easy for Fusion to read those scenarios. And I have those calculations on multiple different forms, which is not best practice, because if you ever need to update that calculation, you can't update it across all of the fields. I always thought if you update it in one, it kind of like lives with that field the same way like Jen's data lived with that field, but it doesn't work for calculated fields the same way. So support told me, like, if you want to use a calculated field on multiple forms, the best practice is to either make it its own each time or to put it on a custom form of its own and then attach that custom form to each project template or request queue, wherever you want that calculation to live. So that's something that I've learned and I've definitely implemented since. And then the last one is just kind of a fun user error problem we've run into a few times. If possible, avoid giving manage access on projects that are set up as queues. We have a team that needs a lot of access to issues that are submitted, even if they're not submitted by that person. They need access to all the regions. And it's always just been set up as manage. But by doing that, if they ever stumble back into the request queue, like in the breadcrumbs, they can change the status. They can delete it too, which is scary. That thankfully has never happened. But I've had it a few times where someone cancels that project, not really realizing what they're doing, and it kind of like turns off the whole request queue. So what I did there was I just dropped them back down to contribute, and they still have all of the permissions except for being able to delete the project or change the status on the project. So far, I haven't run into any issues, but that's definitely something I've learned. And these are things I've learned also from inheriting an instance. Sometimes, it was set up by someone else not following the best practice, or way back then, Workfront worked a different way than it does now, or maybe you didn't have Fusion back then and you do now. So sometimes you run into these situations and it actually gives you a good opportunity to create a better process or build out something in Fusion that didn't exist before. So yeah, that's what I've learned. And we would love to hear from all of you guys to share your trauma stories with the rest of us so that we can all learn from each other. Yeah, let's trauma bond over our Workfront mistakes. So these are like kind of the 4 guiding questions that Jen and I were following. You don't have to follow them like exactly, and we don't expect you to even have to share your screen or have anything prepared. But if you want to just raise your hand or come off mute or throw something in chat, of a situation you had, what you were trying to do, and then how you fixed it. And I see Becky has her hand raised, so go ahead and kick us off, Becky.
Sure. Yeah. So, and I can also share my screen if you want to, but it's up to you if you want visuals. But yeah, I have two, and they're both related. But one of them was basically on a custom form. Whenever I would put in new, like add new fields and need to eliminate old ones, I would delete them. And of course, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to put them in the admin only section. So that was the first one. Here, I'm going to pull it up right now. And so here's an example of that. You should be able to see. Yeah, you can see my screen with the.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can see I have I have the form, and then I made an admin only section. So that was the first one. And then the second example I have was very similar to what you talked about, Kaylee, where it was about queue topics. So I at our organization, we changed our mind quite a bit, and I ended up not only. Oh, can you see the tab that says system admin only in queue topic?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay, great. So yeah, basically we changed our minds with the queue topics, and we wanted to switch the names. So in order to do that, kind of like you were saying, the path stays, but the queue topic name field is going to be no value. It's not going to have a value to it. So I had a lot of requests that I didn't want to be blank on my reports. I wanted to attribute those to a queue topic name. So I ended up working with support, and I made a queue topic field where for the ones, anytime, this is the calculated field here, but for any time that the name was blank, it would read what this queue topic override field said. So I have like all the different types, and then it would follow this, so I could manually update or update in bulk. But yeah, that is the solution that I came up with that. So now I know in general from both of those mistakes, really, that before I change something, definitely think of how it will affect the reporting and test it out in Sandbox. If anything, put it in the system admin field, and keep in mind the repercussions it could have with the data.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Becky.
Yeah.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Yeah.
All right. I think we have another hand up.
Yeah. Gerald, want to go?
Yeah, thanks so much. And this is great. I didn't get to make the last meeting, and I'm glad I'm able to make this one. It's good to see everybody. So my kind of situation is a little bit different. It's not so much a mistake as it is just kind of a scenario that I'd be curious to hear how other people have solved. I'm sure it's happened. So I've also inherited an instance. We made some pretty large and sweeping changes. We've implemented Fusion as well. And where we're seeing challenges is the constant theme where we build to requirements that the business and stakeholders have pulled together, and then requirements shift, right? So you implement something, and they're like, okay, this is really cool. And like, but we can't do this wrinkle. Like, why can't we? And then you start to find yourself trying to modify your solution to meet this new like trailing requirement or like post release requirement that really kind of structurally changes your solution. You're like, well, shoot, if I knew that this was the direction we were going in. And I guess we just see a lot of that with, we find ourselves as Workfront admins, almost like reverse directing the business to say, you need to be more consistent with how you're working, because we can't systemically solve for every wrinkle. Like, you're just working differently, and it's not, there's not value inherently in it. It's just different, right? So can you guys align instead of us trying to build every if else kind of scenario? So just more of a general question, because that's put us, we've had fits over, trying to manage expectations. And then we get pushed back on like, well, Workfront's not flexible enough for us. And it's like, well, it does a lot of great things. It's tremendously powerful, but it also relies on some level of consistency. Like, it can't just be endlessly configurable, right? Like, at least not today. Like, we'll get there, but so, I don't know if either Jen or Kaylee or or Kim, if anyone wants to just sort of take that and give me a response other than just get better requirements. How do people deal with that? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that is a tough one. I know I had a process that we just launched in November that has been in process for 2 years, and it's gone through 3 different iterations of approaches that I've had to like build and reconfigure. I don't know if I have a perfect answer for you. What I will say is, because at least in this situation, their minds kept changing, and I never trust that people won't revert back to the original thing.
Mhm.
So in my situation, every time they were trying to like completely change the approach, I would work with them best that I could, but I would always duplicate the custom form. So I'm like, this is how you had it, and I'm not going to scrap how we had it. I'm going to make a new one, and we'll rebuild how you want it now. But I just have a strong feeling that we might need to go back to the old one. And I've seen it happen in the past where they're like, nah, actually, now that I'm looking at it, I don't like that. I like the old way, but you just scrapped the whole thing. So when applicable, or in Sandbox, like duplicate different versions so you can always go back. But I don't know if anyone else has a better answer for that. I know Laura said we can't solve for every wrinkle. I think Monique's joining shortly, but Monique always is like, if you can't write out start to finish how your process is, I can't build it for you. And that's the answer she gives people. But we all know. Oh, there's Monique.
There
She was
that
summoned.
was like as if on cue.
Just creeping in the background, but what am I here for? You know all the things I'm going to say.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I don't know. If anyone has a better answer for how they handle that, go for it.
Yeah. I won't say I have a better answer just because I didn't even hear the whole question. But from what I did hear, one caveat, if you're duplicating your forms and fields, especially, is if you're using Fusion, that is a different unique ID. So you will have to change all of that stuff. So just.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because if they do like the new version, then you're kind of stuck with rebuilding what you already put together. So reuse fields and anywhere it's possible. Yes. And I love that you said about the production versus Sandbox. Most of y'all probably know, but I usually don't go into my Sandbox, which I know some folks are like, what do you mean? It's fine. We're still here. We're still standing. But that might be a time where I would be like, maybe the Sandbox is your friend.
Mm-hmm.
Refresh it first, and then yes, it can be your friend.
Yeah.
I also try to not build anything in Fusion until they've given me their full stamp of approval on the Workfront process. Obviously, things always change after the fact, but I try as much as possible to get like all of the checkboxes from all of the teams before finalizing an automation.
Really, I really like what you said as far as like, saving the other few. And also, I think what you said too, like where they change their mind. I think that happens a lot, just like we all probably work with clients and things like, our Workfront users are clients too. And, they'll come to us with ideas. And then I do find like sometimes I want something new or complicated. And if you just, take the request, think about it, sometimes in a week or two, they're like, oh no, we figured something else out. So sometimes like to do all that work when they're just going to change their mind, I think, maybe to have like a time process where you review, maybe give them feedback. So it kind of builds a little bit more time before you even start the build, so that you, like you're all saying, make sure that this is really the direction they want to go.
I actually had something that happened a few months ago where I worked with a group, mapped out a workflow, everyone blessed it, and then we rolled it out and I ran a report to see how they were utilizing the workflow. And then I noticed at the end of the summer, it just kind of stopped. And I thought that was really interesting. And then recently they came back to me and said, hey, we want to revisit this workflow. And I was like, I in the report I ran, I noticed you guys aren't utilizing it anymore. And they're like, we actually need a whole new one. And I was like, no, I think what we need to do is remember to use the one that we started with. Use that, play in there, spend time in there, give me 6 months. And then I'm more than happy to tweak. But I don't want to recreate the wheel if you just forgot that you had it. So I'm with you, Carol. Sometimes we have to push back a little bit, but good conversation for sure.
Yeah, to add to that, Jen, I would say make sure the workflow is actually folded into the workflow, right? There's so often, I'm actually going through it right now, where they're like, we have this new idea and we want to do things a different way. And of course, they want to start with Workfront first. And like, no. So to Kaylee's point, as I always say, we got to make sure that we can actually do it, right? Like, does it work? And as I start, and of course, they're like, oh, yeah, of course. So, the kind of reinforce that, I start asking the questions of like, okay, well, who presses this button and what happens next and things like that. And like really getting to the little nuggets of like what goes on in this process is a kinder way, I'll use that word, to kind of highlight that they haven't thought everything through. Because as soon as I forget what we were even working on, but I asked them like, okay, well, who's the owner? And then it was just crickets. And it's like, you don't even know who the project owner is? Like, go back to having meetings.
Yeah, not sure if that all helps, Gerald, but at least it solidifies we all have the same problems.
It does. Yeah, it's good to know you're not alone, I guess.
You're not alone.
And yeah, like one tiny wrinkle that came up. So we do hold like a bi-weekly kind of get together where we go through continuous improvement. We're tracking requests. We're those kinds of things. And one thing that came up, leaders want to do quarterly report outs to senior management, right? And they put together this very kind of intricate kind of they use ChatGPT to generate some kind of report outputs based on what they felt they wanted to report out on, which was great because it was good to see that there were like solid requirements. Like even though some of it was AI generated and didn't 100% align to what we were doing, but the concept, I'm like, okay, so we went through, we reviewed it. Probably about 25-30% of what was in that report out, we don't track because it was never part of the requirements of the project. And I'm like, it'd be great to have, KPI categories and measurables per channel. And then they wanted to have that compared against actual KPIs, which then gets into like process change because somebody's got to go back into the system and enter those actual KPI report outs, right? So the challenge there was like, we can do this. However, we don't track any of this in there today, and the process doesn't currently support it. So again, like if this is the direction we want to go in, and the leaders are aligned on it, then we can start to work towards this. But a week later, we were told to hold off on it because they didn't have standard KPIs defined anyway. So a little bit of a cart before the horse, but that's just another case of like, oh, here's something we really want to do. But yeah, I'm sure people have seen that too.
Yeah. Has anyone else run into that situation? I know I had the same thing that we just ran through in December. And I'm like, you guys have to go back and audit the projects and add the fields in. That's the only way we can get the data. Workfront can't just conspire it and just figure it out. But I don't know. I mean, some people have like a lot of historical data. So maybe you put a cap on how far back, or maybe just like from this fiscal year forward. But I don't know if anyone else has that and how they handled it with their teams.
Yeah, you gotta back data. You gotta have a cap. Like, and that's always the first question that I ask before. And I'm like, how far back do we go? And usually they're just staring at me and I'm like, we have 10 years of data. Yep. I can tell you as someone who's here and saw the bodies get buried, I don't know those answers. So how far back are we usually going? Usually it's 1 year. I've seen 2 years. But it was also something that was pretty like simple to track. So it wasn't too bad, but yeah, I think also, Gerald, to your point, you got to find out like why they're doing whatever they want to do and like what they think is going to solve. So something that I'm still working through it, but something I'm trying to implement better is when someone asks for a report, not just like having the normal conversations, but asking them like, what is the sentence that you want to be able to say, right? It's always like a bullet point on a PowerPoint or whatever, like what is that sentence? And for us, it's kind of easy to get them to think that way because we do claim data for our products. So like this drill is 5 times faster than the last one we put out, things like that. So making them put their brain in that framework really helps because then I know like, or it might not even be a sentence. Sometimes it's like, oh, well, we want to use it for head count. I'm like, you can't, right? Like we need a whole different number. So instead of just being that order taker, like using your expertise and what you know of the system and being able to say like, all right, what are you trying to do with this after I hand it to you? Because I have seen many reports get used highly incorrectly, which has resulted in wild decision makings that I've had to go back and be like, that's not what that number means. You might not want to do what you think this is going to do. Like I've had people overpromise based off of like a volume that was not the volume that we were producing, but because they misunderstood, I think it was like piece count versus project count, like that number was hella ballooned. And it's like, nope, that's not, take that off the slide, like retract that. That's not what that means. This team is not handling 100,000 projects in a year. Like, Joe. So yeah, just know that sometimes you put that information in hands, but with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, I had the same project in pieces, and asking the users don't always know how to ask for what they want in Workfront, and sometimes they ask for something and you give them verbatim what they asked for, and that's not what they meant, but they didn't use the right words. And yeah, asking those clarifying questions is always helping you be like, that I know what you need now. That's not what you actually asked for. I hope you know that.
Yeah. Also in meetings, like I just had a meeting last week where there was a bunch of creative leaders on there, and I was kind of showing them, I think some of you know, but we're switching from like one project per deliverable to one project per like work stream. So multiple deliverables in a project. Real fun times over here. But they had never seen that before. So I was showing, they were like, well, what does that look like? So I was showing it to them. And then some of them are using like the word program when it should have been project. Some are using, I don't even know what word. So like often I almost feel like I'm that actually nerd. I'm like, that's not what that means, but you kind of have to. And you know, just do it in a way that's not annoying, get you kicked out of the meeting, but just being like, okay, just so that we're all clear, when Kaylee said this, she's actually talking about that's a program and that's how this goes and da 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 da.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kim.
No, I've been racking my brain of the mistakes that I've made in the past that I'm like, what can I share that everybody else can learn from? Because I think we've already established a couple of them in the chats. One of them, and it was triggered by something Monique said about like having been in the system for like 10 years. I made the mistake of not using the system for myself until like a year ago. So I've been in the system for like a decade, and I've never really used Workfront for myself in all of the requests and modifications and reports, and can you make a tweak to this, and you can make, so I've been working for like 9 years and none of it's documented. I harp on everybody else, like make sure everything you do is captured in Workfront, and all of my work was just like in the ether, right? So I set up a separate like request queue topic, and I set up an email address where I could email a request to myself. Like I can assign it to myself. If you've gone in your request queue settings, you can set up an email address, and then you can email yourself, and just the subject line of your email creates a request for you, so that I could, you know, if somebody chatted me and they're like, hey, can you make a tweak to this report? I could be like, yeah, I can do that. I email myself real quick to that email address, which creates a request for me. And then I can take notes on that request as to what I did, what I changed, who asked for it, why. If I make a change to a Fusion scenario, I can download the JSON, download the blueprint, attach it to that request so that I have it. And it has been life-changing to like document what I do. So
now, Kim, do you have, so we have a help request queue, like a Workfront help request queue. And I encourage our users to if they don't understand something, if they need a change to a workflow, if they need a project deleted. I have all these drop downs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will get like the notifications, and if we didn't have that, I feel like I'd be losing my mind, because I still get like things coming in on Teams, things coming in, calls, right? Things coming in an email. But I'm with you. I having everything documented, and I also have like a change log, so that when I do document things in the system, I document when I changed it. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a meeting where someone's like, we changed that. I don't know why or when. And I'll be like, oh, wait, hold on. Okay, yes, this is why, this is, yeah. Because things are constantly evolving.
Yeah.
Every day. Sometimes I'd like, just one day, can we just have, can it just be like a boring status quo day? That's just not how it is. But yeah, I'm completely with you.
Kim, Gerald asked a question if you could share more about the email request approach.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up so that I can go to the exact.
Yeah, I don't want to put you out, but that sounds awesome. So if there's any way you can do that, like any bit of it,
Yeah.
that sounds terrific.
So I'm going into my queue for, it's just labeled, Workfront support, right? It's just the regular queue, because I do have one set up where people can go in and request things. They don't. But like, yeah. So I, in the queue details, at the very, very, very bottom of the queue details, there is something called email queue settings. And you can check a box that says enable request intake via email. And then you can generate an intake email address. And then just, I added it to my address book. And so whenever somebody chats me something, I send something right to that and it creates a request. It's basically my like running to-do list now. If somebody chats me this, that, hallway conversation in passing, because to ask somebody like to go in and put in a Workfront request for like a super minor, like little thing, I feel sometimes is bad customer experience, So in order to like keep them in Workfront, keep them engaged, keep them going, sometimes I just take the thing and I put it in. And this is the fastest way I can get it in my request queue. So enable request intake via email in your queue details, all the way down at the bottom.
Awesome. Thank you.
I love your idea. And I think too, like sometimes also an executive or somebody is maybe asking you to do something that you don't want to send them to the queue. But yes. I love that once you've created the request, then you can almost train them, because you can then update them on the request and remind them, hey, it's here and this is where we're going to communicate. So it's kind of a good way to get them over there too.
That's exactly what happens. I make an update to what they asked for, or I document what they asked for in a comment there and I tag them in it. Mm-hmm. We continue the conversation there. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll add on to that, I guess. We also this year, well, it was kind of last year was more informal, and this year we've been really formal about just having projects like internally to keep track of our Workfront roadmap. We have things that are department goals, we have things that are team goals, and then you get all these requests that are on the side. Sometimes it's make a report and takes you an hour, whatever. And sometimes they're like, I have this brand new process, and you're like, that's more of a lift than you think it is. So we've defined out a whole project that I have one other admin, and we just kind of like have it broken out with parent tasks of like what category it falls into, and we establish like what quarter we want to try to get that done in. And so then when a new thing comes in, we put it in our backlog, and when there's time we can go to it, and otherwise we can determine like where we can fit it in the roadmap to give our teams like a good idea of when we can actually get to that request. And Kim, you mentioned about Fusion and downloading the blueprints. I love that. We just built out a project with like each task is just the name of the Fusion scenario, and then I've added a custom form on the task level and made like a really pretty custom view. So now like everyone and like our VP and people that don't go into Fusion or are scared to click around in Fusion but want to know more about what's going on and what scenarios are doing, we have it all in there, and we label if there's a sandbox scenario, what the core purpose of the scenario is, and what IDs of anything it's using or what custom fields it's using. Because going back to I know Monique, you mentioned it earlier, talking about changing fields. Anytime you're changing fields, if you use Fusion, you also have to think about that. Any new field, any new template changing or deleting not only impacts data within Workfront, but it can not have everything work in Fusion the way you thought it was working. So having that somewhere where you can search is also super nice.
Yeah, I see that your hand's raised, Steven, so I won't talk too much, but I always, in my custom field where the instructions are, I make a little note that says used in Fusion. Nobody uses the little hover anyway, so if you're worried about they might see it.
I like that.
Fine. But yeah, so that way, if you are editing the field, you see it right there, and you're like, right, let's not touch that one.
I like the tips. Keep them coming. All right, Steven, what do you got for us?
Yeah, it was just kind of on the field naming thing in Fusion specifically. I'm a big Fusion nerd. I love automation. So,
Love to hear it.
But what I found is the best practice for that is to set variables instead of carrying those field names throughout each module. So get your data from whatever you're pulling it from, and then set those fields as variable names, and then use those variable names throughout the rest of the scenario. So if a field name changes, you only have to change it before it becomes a variable. So
that's a really good tip.
I've run into that a bunch where I've changed our queues and our reports all the time, and we need new fields, we need fields calculated differently all the time, and it'll go in and it'll break, and I won't notice for 2 days, and I'll have 6 emails from Workfront that say, hey, your Fusion scenario stopped. And then I'm just like, oh no, and I have to go in and click through every single module of 36. So yeah, if you just use those variables.
Awesome.
Yeah,
good
tip.
I'm learning so much, guys. This is such a great conversation, and I'm so appreciative of the participation. Does anyone else have, I'm just kind of watching our time here. Does anyone else have some key learnings that you learned in 2025? Maybe even things that you learned in the 29th day of the month. We just would love for you guys to share it because this is great.
Yeah, go ahead, Kara.
I was just gonna say, I was thinking about something that happened to me this year, and I had a new team that was coming into one of our work fronts, and they were kind of piloting sort of the way to work, and so we were looking at the home because they wanted to start utilizing that, and they wanted to filter my tasks by a specific view. So I was like, oh, great. And I went into the layout templates, and I went to home and went to update the widget, and I changed the filter for what they would see on my task. And I had no idea that it would change the filter on the project timeline task. So the next morning, everybody starts emailing me, why can't I see all of my tasks in my project timeline? And my stomach just I was like, oh my God, what did I do? And so I had, so of course I reached out to Workfront support and hey, I did it here, but it's showing here, and learned that it actually affected the task filter, not only in the widget, but also in your project timeline. So, of course I reverted back to what it was to see all tasks, but, I think I tend to be like Monique and, just work in production. And I think, it's always good to test stuff, even if I had tested it that night, right? I didn't even think to sort of check everything. So that was just a learning that I could share with everyone.
Monique, I love your comment.
I do too. Just blame. It was a system update, right?
Let me take a look at that. That's weird.
I can't tell you how many things Adobe has screwed up over the years where I'm like, why would they do that?
But I think they know how to fix it, right, Monique?
Exactly. And then when it is a real one, then they're just even more mad. I'm like, I can't fix that one. Sorry, guys. I know I came in a little late. So has anyone given the tip of using the preview environment to save your stuff if you've deleted them?
No.
No.
Tell us more. Enlighten us.
The reaction, but I'm like, okay, I guess nobody has. So, as you know, I work in production, and I also sometimes just am doing things on the fly, which I probably should have spent more thought on. So one that comes to mind, it was not last year, but it still lives rent free in my brain, is I was trying to figure out how to do some auto provisioning. And granted, this was before admin console, but there was a nice little button over in setup where I was like, okay, we have it all set up, and it was working. I'm like, awesome. And then the next day I was like, what happens if I try to make this a little bit better? So that way, when it auto provisions these people, it'll put them in this group with this access level, right? Like, I know that that's a thing that you can do. Where I did it was not where you're supposed to do it. So essentially, every time someone logged in, it reset all of their settings to this very free generic version. So I had people calling me like, I can't see any of my projects. Everything is missing. Da 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 da. And I'm like, huh, okay. So I
Workfront updated overnight, right?
Yeah, it was one of those where I was like, I don't know what's going on. Let's look into that. So I immediately go and I change it back to where it was, how it was before. That part I knew, because I knew exactly what I screwed up. But meanwhile, at least 200 people had brand new settings. And of course, I don't know like every single person's setting. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, how do I fix this? Like, how do I go back? And then I remembered, and this is the lesson of, you never make big changes on Fridays. So if there's nothing that you have ever heard me say before, we don't make big changes or delete things on Fridays, because if you don't catch it that day, preview resets and it will copy whatever you did on Friday, and you're stuck with that for a week. Whereas in my case, it was a Thursday. I caught it. I went straight to preview environment, ran a user report. I also ran a user report in my current production instance to see like last login date, because it was only the people that logged in that day. So I got that export, used ID as one of the columns. So then I was able to export that. And then I grabbed all the IDs, went to preview. Went to preview, ran a report of ID equals, and pasted all of them in. So I had all 200 whatever people, and there it was. There was the access level they were supposed to have, the home group, etc. And then I kind of grouped people like that had the same and edited in bulk. So, it's one of those where I would absolutely wear a t-shirt. Maybe I need one before Summit. I'm just saying, we never delete.
There's like 3 of them here that you like. We could comb the chat and have them printed. So anyway, might be coming.
But yeah, that was
package.
That was one of those things where I was just like, oh my goodness, like, and like for I don't know why, but like my brain remembered that preview was there and was able to get there. But that's something that once you've done it once, so now you guys don't have to make that mistake. Just know your preview environment has a nice little sorry, I just saw Kat's comment. But yeah, your preview environment has a nice little record of your current Workfront instance as of that Monday, which is a great place to go if you ever screw up royally.
That's a good tip.
That is a good tip.
Yeah. Also, if you delete a field, it's like it's like losing your wallet. You can get a new ID. Can't get that same picture back, right? Like,
Monique, you're on fire today. It's like the fourth T-shirt.
I mean, Jen, this is me all the time, but
I know, but like they're really good. They're really good tips.
We can all have our own with a different quote.
That's what I'm saying.
That's funny. But yeah, like definitely there's certain things where I tell people, and that's also why I don't let folks have delete in their access level for most things. Mm-hmm. Cynthia says that it's my Thor hammer and I wield it greatly, happily. No, because if you delete it, we can't get it back. And there's too many things relying on it. So if I go back to that instance I was just telling you about, as we combine these projects together, a lot of folks now are going to lose some of the permissions that they had before, because it's even more vital that they don't like accidentally delete a task or things like that. So they're going to complain, but it's also it's for their better. They'll get over it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
few more minutes left. I know Jen and I have like 2 slides to wrap up with, but if anyone has anything last minute they want to get out there.
Last minute tip.
Yeah.
Donna.
Not a mistake, but template task reports is something that I've been using a lot lately, and template task ID. So if you do, like, I had a really weird instance where I was trying to locate like a very unique task in all of my projects. And I was like, how do I find that? The name might change because we use templates. I could use template task ID equals and then pull all of them into a report.
I like that.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Yes.
Yeah, so kind of along the lines of like, don't make changes on Fridays. Also, start as small as you can. So if somebody is asking for like, I need a new custom status or I need a report, like what's the smallest group that needs that? And probably like native group in Workfront too. So like literally what is the smallest team? And then change their statuses. And then if it needs to branch out from there, go that way versus going into like your system statuses and adding a new status in there. Terrible idea. Also a terrible idea to delete statuses from the system. Just do it at the smallest level as possible. I learned that one like yesterday. So.
Oh, good. It's fresh. Thanks.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that, if your org reorgs, custom statuses are a nightmare. And same with layout templates. So a lot of people are always like, why do you only have one? Because our studio team shuffles like no other. And at one point we had hyper specific ones of like, this is for photo and this is for video and this is for the DeWalt team, etc. And then one day all of those folks were under the same manager and they were sharing screens and none of their Workfront screens looked the same. It was a nightmare. So it's not always just because I don't want to build all of them. There's some lessons to be learned in there as well. So completely agree. Go as simple as possible.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of lessons, I feel like we all learned a lot of them today. So Kaylee, should we go back to our deck so we can wrap up the conversation? But guys, thank you so much for sharing. This was great.
Yeah. And I mean, you guys know this, that Workfront is always hosting some sort of call. And I feel like there are so many that are so valuable to get lots of information out of. I know this is just a PowerPoint slide. I'm sending all the links in chat. Oh, it's over characters. Okay. When Jen does the last slide, I will fix my message and send all these links individually. But you can also access these on the events page in Experience League. So these are what are left for February, and I'm sure in a couple weeks there'll be some more events added for what's coming up in March. So between this meeting and our next WUG, check out all the other amazing Workfront events where you can see some of all of us on the call and other amazing Workfront people to learn and continue learning things to do and not do in Workfront.
Always learning. And we would love for you guys to connect with us. We have events quarterly, and in order to know about our events, you actually have to join our WUG. I know we have folks that are from Chicago, from Delaware. I think there was someone from South Carolina. We would love for you to come back, and we'd love to see you again. So join our WUG, and you can also get a copy of the recording for today's call. But guys, thank you so much for your participation. I think that's what is my favorite part about these events. I love how open and willing you are to share, and that's how we learn. So thank you for telling us about your mistakes, because we're all human. So yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys. Hope you all have a great rest of your week, and see you next WUG.
Have a good one.
Thanks for hosting.
Of course. Thanks for coming.